Gender segregation in economic sectors also reflects in the digital and platform economy. How can we overcome gender segregation through digitalization?
So there were some hopes that digitalization and, for instance, use of platform, but also more working remotely could help through work-life balance, get more women into the labor market as well. What we find in our study is that there's actually a very clear link between the gender divisions we find in the traditional labor market, so offline, and the tasks being done through platforms. So we find many more women doing tasks like on-location work, which is very often tutoring, babysitting, care, and far less in transport or even remote professional work. So we don't really find a big sort of liberating factor of the. On the other hand, click work is relatively perfectly 50-50 divided. And there are some divisions as well in remote professional work, with men doing more IT, women doing more copy editing, translation work. So it just very much reflects what's already unequal on the labor market.
Italy stands among countries with the lowest diffusion rate of digital work. According to you, could this be partially explained by the low digitalization level of the small and medium enterprises?
That is a question that I find really difficult to answer. So we know from the literature that definitely the digitalization in the labor market, also the sort of network and infrastructure available in the country, does play a role in incentivizing platforms. What we actually find is that Italy does not really stand out as lower prevalent of doing internet or platform work. What might be a very big change, of course, but we haven't studied that, is that there might be very big differences in the use of digital technology and remote work at Italian companies. However, from what we see with remote work, we have seen a huge shift, of course, due to the COVID pandemic, but with Italy actually doing the shift very, very quickly compared to other countries, which would be interesting and does indicate that some of the infrastructure at least is there. But apart from that, I can say little.
Talking about internet and platform work, it means also to shed a light on some risks, such as discrimination and misclassification of employment status. Which are the solutions that governments and the collective bargaining can put in place to address these key challenges?
I think that is a really important point, and that's clearly something that is already being worked on at national levels, but also through the European Union and their directive for platform work. The main thing seems to be, the main focus now lies on fixing the employment status issue, because there has been a tendency to misclassify workers. Of course, some are genuine self-employed, genuine freelancers, but some are in such a dependent state to the platform, especially those who make quite a lot of money through the platform, that they would be false on self-employed. So now the legislation seems to go towards the way of having a checklist and this almost assumption of employee status in most of the cases, which is in line with, at the moment, a lot of legislation and a lot of court cases being done, showing that when people go to court, generally the employment status is protected and people are classified as workers. So I think there is a very big scope for government regulation to help support workers in more vulnerable positions more. Because the problem is, while I think there are some very good platforms and there's some positive aspects, very often people work on the worst working conditions, have lower incomes than they should. We find, for instance, very low rates with people working under the minimum wage, and this really deserves more protection. Beyond the employment status, there also should be more focus on the actual conditions of work. What is paid labor? What are people being paid for? And it has to be in line with national regulation, otherwise we risk undercutting legitimate businesses.